Welcome to the Hoopologist podcast. My name is Saif Basaria.
My name is Shaban Samani.
And I'm Asad Lalani.
And listener, it's been a little bit. The NBA Finals ended, and we kind of just decided we're gonna take a little bit of a break. We were gonna do the lottery, but the last 2 years we've done pretty piss poor at the lottery. So I think we decided, you know what, we'll just skip that. We'll just take a little break, and then we'll do free agency.
Speak for yourself. Kays and I had one right.
One in 2 years is still pretty close to piss poor, my friend. Anyway, at The Hoopologist on Instagram and Twitter, and The Hoopologist podcast on YouTube is where you can find us on socials. Today, we're going to do the free agency frenzy that we've seen. Obviously, listener, there's a ton of trades, a ton of rumors, a ton of I would like to be traded requests, apparently. We're not going to be able to cover all of it today. Otherwise, we would be here for multiple days, and listener, you would get tired of hearing us. Plus, let's be honest, you probably heard a lot of this from wherever you get your basketball news otherwise. So instead, what we're going to do is a similar thing that we did last year. If you were around for the free agency frenzy episode, we've kind of just broken into categories, talking about some of our favorite signings, some of our least favorite signings, some of our best fits, some of our worst fits, in the hopes to kind of create a more creative way of discussing the NBA free agency as it's been. Before that, let's talk about some of the big trades, because there's been some big trades. The first of which actually happened before the draft. Shaban rather celebrated, followed by absolute dismay, sadness, and depression. Or at least that's what Mavs Reddit would like you to believe. They traded for Christian Wood, and by they, I mean the Dallas Mavericks. And in return, they sent Houston the 26th pick, which turned into Wendell Moore. They also traded Sterling Brown, Marquise Chris, Boban, and Trey Burke. Shaban, at the time and even now, how do you feel about this trade? And let's keep it as quickly as possible.
All right, I'll keep it brief. I feel fucking great.
Good.
We finally got a big man that can rebound, who can run the pick and roll, who can run the pick and pop, and we can actually just leave him alone in the post, and he's able to create. And the best part is that we got him for free. We gave Houston a bunch of assets that we didn't even play in the playoffs, including like Boban. I'm going to miss dearly, but hey, Boban, I hope you get flipped to another team, and I hope that team cuts you so that you can come back to the Mavericks this season. But aside from that, we gave a bunch of salary filler for a potential core piece to this offense, and I believe that automatically makes it a win, and Dallas is already a better team than they were last year.
For the most part, I agree with what you said. They got him for free, which is obviously nice, or damn near free. Boban was really the only cost. And that first round pick, the 26th pick, which I think it's fair to say the Mavericks in the last couple of years haven't really drafted all that well anyway. So it's not really the end of the world if this first round pick didn't end up with them. Instead, Houston, who has basically been hoarding young players and picks over the last multiple years, got a player who I assume they like very much. So obviously on the Houston side of things, real quick, how do you feel about it? Did you like it? How did the city feel about it, or how did the fan base feel about it, since you're a little more in tap with Houston?
I think the fans knew this was coming. Rockets Twitter obviously was on the Christian Wood trade machine for a while.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the get, I think it's fine. I'd give it an average. I don't think that they're going to be keeping a lot of these guys. That probably will get cut at some point along the way, or waived, or kind of let them go play for another team. The pick was nice, and what Houston did was trade that to Minnesota, and they got the 29th pick in return, and they took Ty Washington, who they liked, out of Kentucky. You know, we talked about Ty in our March Madness episode, and he was a potential even lottery pick at one point, but his stock kind of dropped after the tournament, and Rockets believe that they got a steal where they got Ty. So, that's kind of TBD to see if that paid off, but Houston was never going to pay Christian Wood. We had to get him out of here at some point. The in-division trade, I don't love. Would likely have wanted to send him somewhere else instead of a team that we're going to pay like 4 times a year. So it is what it is, or 2 times a year, I guess. But even then, it's not the best, but good luck to Christian Wood. Hope he plays well for Dallas, and let's see what the Rockets do with Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, and a slew of some of these guys.
Cool. Moving on to the next one, the Hawks traded for DeJounte Murray from the Spurs, as well as Jake Landale, who they ended up flipping a little bit later. So really, DeJounte Murray is obviously the big get here. In return, they gave the Spurs Gallinari, who looks to be bought out or will be bought out by the Spurs in the next few days or so. They got a 2023 first round pick from the Charlotte Hornets, a 25 and 27 first round picks from the Hawks, as well as a 2026 pick swap. So we're looking at 3 first round picks as well as a swap for DeJounte Murray is essentially the breakdown of this trade. This is kind of a bank on DeJounte Murray and Trae Young being able to work together. Trae Young needed to play a little more off ball. Now they bring in a ball handler who is very, very good and also a very good defender for his size. You know, funny enough, DeJounte Murray, I feel like he plays bigger than he is because I ended up looking up his height. He's only 6'4". I thought he was bigger than that. So us quickly thoughts on this trade, and then let's get out of here.
Yeah, I really really like this move by Atlanta. We obviously are banking on the fact that those picks, the unprotected picks that we gave up, are going to be high first rounders or late first rounders.
Yeah.
Given that the team is going to be high, like I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah. High in the order, sure. Yes.
High,
20,
yeah.
20s
so,
is what we're hoping for, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. The Hawks are going to be in playoff contention every year, where those picks aren't going to matter as much, and we won't get burned. Mm-hmm. But we put somebody like DeJounte next to Trae, who can kind of mask the Trae's defensive weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And honestly, DeJounte averaged, I think, 19, 8, and 8 last year. He could average the same exact stats with Atlanta in this next upcoming season. So, his playing time is not going to change. His role, is not going to change that much, except for he's not going to be the main primary ball handler like all the time, but he will still get a lot of that run with the second unit. And I think it'll be really, really good for Trae and this entire Hawks team.
All right.
Did DeJounte Murray with 9.2 assists per game last season with the Spurs. One can only wonder what kind of damage he's going to do with this Atlanta offense. This Atlanta offense being the second best offense in the league last year.
Moving on to the Celtics. The Celtics ended up acquiring Malcolm Brogdon, and in return, they sent the Pacers Daniel Tice, Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, Juwan Moore, Aaron Nesmith, and a 2023 first-round pick. This is fantastic for the Celtics, and I hate to say that as a Laker fan. I would love for them to have lost this trade. There's no world in which they lost this trade. Basically, they traded off Aaron Nesmith, who is a quality player in the NBA and still very young and totally worth the Indiana Pacers to attempt to develop, as well as a 2023 first-round pick, which if the Celtics are anything like they were this past year, a pick in the 20s is basically what they just sent away. For Malcolm Brogdon, who, yes, injury-prone as he may be, is a fantastic guard off the bench, and they needed playmaking, they needed good shooting, they needed good defense, and he does pretty much everything rather well. He's basically a better Derek White, minus maybe a little bit worse on defense, but still an above average defender. Malcolm Brogdon for damn near free is solid for Boston. I think a huge get. You're basically taking the Peyton Pritchard remnants that Boston was obviously given to Peyton Pritchard and replacing them with Malcolm Brogdon, who is obviously a better basketball player right now than Peyton Pritchard has been in his career so far. So I think this is a huge win for Boston. For Indiana, I mean, the question is always like, is this really all you could get? But basketball teams aren't generally stupid, bar the next trade we're going to talk about. But generally, basketball teams are not stupid. And so the assumption is they chopped them around, and this was actually the best they could get, or damn close. So I guess this is all they could get from Malcolm Brogdon. Listen, real quick, your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, Pacers got a bunch of young players, a bunch of young pieces, projects that they could take a shot at. And given Malcolm Brogdon's injury history, and just his age and kind of the way he played, like they don't really, they don't need a guy who can give them wins, which Malcolm Brogdon can do. Everyone is jumping on the Victor tank train, and the Pacers are right there in front. So, for the Pacers, it made sense. And they get a bunch of young guys. They'll see who they can develop. They'll see if it's worth it. And that's about it.
And listener, if you're not fully aware of what's going on, Victor Wembanyama is a French young player who's projected to be the first overall pick this year. That's what I was referring to. And a lot of teams in the next few days or weeks will continue to do moves that allow them to be worse. because apparently this is the best prospect we've had since LeBron James.
Is that okay? I knew he was good.
You know
but
what?
I read it on.
I
I want to give a name to it, but I can't. But I 100% read this on the front page of ESPN. This is quoted by a definite writer of ESPN. So not to say that he or she is wrong. It's simply that is very high praise for any player, right? To be the best prospect since LeBron James. There's been a hell of a few first overall picks that have been pretty good since LeBron James. And this is the guy that's supposed to be better than them all. So, okay, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'll just take that with a grain of salt. We once called Andrew Wiggins the next LeBron James at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. But like, think about it. We've had some good first overall picks since LeBron freaking James. If I'm not mistaken, Dwight Howard was the first overall pick.
Kyrie
was the first overall pick. Anthony Davis was the first overall pick. Zion, pretty good so far, first overall pick. When healthy. So like, to say that this is definitely the best guy since LeBron is definitely high praise. And I mean, maybe he is. We're gonna have to find out. It's gonna take time. Either way, whatever team is tanking wants a shot.
He's 7'3", can shoot, can pass, and play defense and dribble. Like he's got the complete package, and he's 7 foot fucking 3. So,
but he already weighs less than me, and he's a foot and a half taller. That's a problem.
Okay, but he'll get some muscle on him. That happens to everybody. It's happened. Like we talked about this with Chet with this past draft. We've talked about it with Giannis and Embiid. Like a lot of guys who come into the league skinny.
But for every guy that comes in skinny and works out, there's also another guy who comes in skinny and doesn't work. So it is a bit concerning, at least. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't be taken or you shouldn't tank for the guy. It's just that let's not act like these aren't some concerns. Anyway, let's talk about the most absurd trade, and then we really have to get to free agency. The Minnesota Timberwolves acquired Rudy Gobert. And if I told you that they traded basically 5 first-round picks and a few role players, you would either call me crazy or think that they acquired Kevin Durant instead. But they acquired Rudy Gobert. And the package was Walker Kessler, who was the first round pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. I believe he's like 22 or 23 pick in the draft. Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and then the 2023, 25, and 27 first-round unprotected picks of the Minnesota Timberwolves, as well as a 2029 protected pick. I believe top 5 protected is what was sent over to the Utah Jazz. They got a hell of a haul. And my only question, whether you like the trade or not, my only question to Minnesota was, who the hell were you competing against? Who was offering even close to what you sent? They sent the equivalent of 5 first-round picks, if you include, obviously, this year with Walker Kessler being that first-round pick. And then, 2 decent rotation players who likely might get reflipped at some point, or maybe they'll just play him out. And then a nice young player in Jared Vanderbilt, who's at least a good defender in the NBA, could potentially become something. Who knows? All for Rudy Gobert, who is 30 years old. And in the year 2024 and 25 NBA season, he will make $47 million. The only question I have, Asad, are they even top 2 in the Western Conference to go to the NBA Finals after this trade?
Fuck no.
So then why make this trade?
No.
What's the purpose of making this trade here?
I don't. Yeah. The point that you made about who they're competing against is really valid. I can't think of any single team who would be offering that much, let alone 3 unprotected first-round picks. The fact that even one of those was given up, actually 2, like Atlanta did it, and now Minnesota did it in this free agency. Like, that doesn't happen. Teams are deathly afraid of that, and will only do it if they really truly believe that it's going to be worth it. And obviously, Atlanta took that gamble. Minnesota is taking this gamble now that they can play Towns and Gobert together, and it'll just magically change their world, and they'll be like a top 2, top 3 team in the West. But I don't see that. Gobert is not that good offensively to justify that. If he was a good offensive player on his own, then it could be worth it.
I think Zuko, Shaban's dog, agrees that he is not that good. Vehemently. I think you're right, dude. He's a good player. He's obviously a very good player. He's one of the best, if not the best defender in the NBA.
Best interior defender in the league, no doubt.
Sure. I can't imagine a world in which you trade 4 or 5 first round picks, especially, by the way, Minnesota Timberwolves. You're not trading first round picks of a competent franchise, regardless of new ownership or new GM or whatever it may be. This is Minnesota Timberwolves. You've been bad for basically ever. So these picks matter and they are relevant. And to trade 4 or 5 of them would imply that you're a finals team or a finals contender. And I still would not label the Minnesota Timberwolves either of those things after this trade has been made. At least when you make a Anthony Davis trade, for example, you have LeBron James, and you're probably going to make the finals. And by the way, they did end up winning one. So, no harm, no foul. It is what it is. But when you make a trade like this, you would imply that you're going to go to the NBA Finals. And Shaban, I would assume that you believe that they will not be going to the NBA Finals after this Rudy Gobert trade.
They will not.
I mean, barring Anthony Edwards turning into LeBron James.
I mean, well, the thing is, like, they also gave up Malik Beasley, who is arguably one of their best perimeter defenders, and he was a 40% three-point shooter for them. And they lost Josh Okogie, who was their actual best perimeter defender.
Well, Josh Okogie walked in free agency. That's a different scenario altogether. They didn't trade him in this deal, right?
Well, it just compounds the existing scenario that they. I don't see Minnesota being a better team this year than they were last year. Yeah, sure, they got
better.
Gobert.
I think they'll be better.
Marginally, yeah.
I don't know. They finished 7th and played in that play-in game. Oh yeah, because Patrick Beverley jumped on the sideline like he won the fucking NBA championship.
They were what?
And they traded his ass.
Right. They were what, the 8th seed this past year. I would wager that they will be better than the 8th seed this year. So they definitely got better. But you give up 5 picks, you're hoping you're a finals team. Anyway, let's move on. We have so much to talk about in the free agency world because what was it? 2 years ago, the Bogdanovich to Milwaukee deal happened, right? And it was announced basically right when the window opened to sign free agents or whatever. And then Milwaukee lost a first round pick. And then we're like, hey, maybe the teams will wait 5 extra minutes to make it look like less tampering. Nope. As soon as the window opened this year, like $1 billion, like quite literally $1 billion was spent in 45 seconds. So teams just don't give a shit about tampering. I don't blame them. It's more fun for me and you and listener. I'm sure you enjoyed it. But the way we're going to do this is we're going to start by talking about players. We're going to talk about winners and losers from the free agency situation or when they sign contracts. The way I think we all decided to view this is players who either were paid more than they deserved or landed in situations that are good for them and therefore they are a winner. Is that fair? Is that kind of a fair assessment to both of you and how you saw this?
Yeah,
definitely.
Cool. And from a loser standpoint, we just call this the Dennis Schroeder Award from now on because it makes me happy. A player who either did not end up making the money that they had initially hoped to, or landed in a not great situation for whatever reason, which is kind of weird because they kind of choose their own contracts, or where they choose to sign, but whatever. Anyway, a winner obviously is Jalen Brunson. It's pretty clear he was signed with the New York Knicks. Shaban, it's what, 4 years, $104 million sound right to you?
4104, yeah.
Great. So 4104, he signed to be coached by his father and work under the general manager who is the father of his agent. How that's tampering.
He may as well be his godfather.
How that's not tampering, I will never ever understand. Whatever. I don't care.
They're under investigation for tampering right now. So
are they? Well, good.
Yes.
They probably should be, considering they hired his dad to be an assistant coach of the basketball team. Now, fair enough. His dad is an assistant coach in the NBA and has been and has worked under Tibbs, funny enough, in Chicago and in Minnesota. And Tibbs is also the coach in New York. So, like, there are reasons to also hire him, but it doesn't hurt that his son was also a free agent like a few months after he was. Anyway, besides the point, Jalen Brunson got paid. He got probably a lot more money than he otherwise would have gotten if he had signed, for example, the 4-year, $55 million contract that he asked for last summer from Dallas. Shaban, that sound right to you as well, the numbers?
Yeah, that's about the same as the Dorian Finney-Smith contract.
Yeah, and obviously he and his agent went and said, hey, we'd sign for $455. The Dallas said no for I don't know what reason. And then he ends up waiting 1 year, playing reasonably well, especially in the playoffs, and he makes quite literally double that. So I would call him a winner. My only question, Shaban, to you might be, Luka entered the playoffs hurt, right? And he missed some time. And even when he came back, it took a few seconds for him to get back on his feet. And Jalen, during that time, looked incredible, like really, really, really good. So much so that Dallas ended up winning a game or two against Utah without their best player, Luka Doncic, because Jalen was a big part of that. If Luka doesn't get hurt coming into the playoffs, assume Luka is healthy. Does Jalen still get this contract and this much money, or is his playoff performance kind of leading to why he got this kind of number?
So his playoff performance definitely inflated his value, especially the first few games of the Utah series where he just completely took over. But if Luka does start in the playoffs, I think he still goes to New York. I think he still gets a little overpaid, but not as much as what we're seeing right now. Not for 4104. I believe the number before was for like what 490.
Yeah,
Like that was his number. Like
it's kind of what I saw.
that was the number that we were looking at pre-playoffs.
Makes sense.
So
he definitely made himself a few extra bucks.
Yeah, he inflated his value by about $15 million. So yeah, good credit to him.
Must be nice.
Yeah, seriously.
Also, real quick from
Couldn't
you,
be
what do you
me.
think? Right. Also, real quick, what do you think?
For the same reason that they got paid this season, didn't get paid last season. It's like his playoff performance at the end of last year was pretty bad. He was injured, didn't really play, was not very good. Blamed himself. It was pretty hard on himself for why the Mavericks struggled in last year's playoffs, and he took it personally and really worked on his game. And obviously, that contract now shows that he deserved it. And so that's a tough pill for the Mavs to swallow now. But in hindsight, looking at that point where how Jalen Brunson played at the end of last year, I think that it's fair that they didn't pay him then because they didn't know what was going to happen this year, and you never do know. So it sucks, but I see where the Mavs came from last year.
I mean, look, they got Christian Wood for free, and they lost Jalen Brunson for free. I would call that a wash, more or less. Also, talk to us about a player winner that you feel won free agency.
Yeah, definitely the biggest feel-good story of this free agency and Gary Payton II from the Warriors. So Gary Payton in and out of the league, the G League, 5 to 10 years, that he spent with like 7 or 8 different teams playing on trying to make it to their NBA roster, and never really, was made it through until the Warriors stint. And, with the Warriors, he was able to he succeeded in that system. Played really good defense, even made some threes when people said that he wasn't a shooter and didn't really come into the league being able to shoot. And he got himself, a nice 3-year, $26 million deal with Portland, life-changing money for him.
Yeah, no joke.
And, nobody thought that he was going to get paid, but he had that self-belief and worked his ass off, and he got it. So good for Gary Payton, definitely a winner, and definitely happy for the guy.
Shaban, you got a player winner not named Jalen Brunson or Gary Payton? Gary Payton.
I'll go with the guy that the Mavericks swapped out for him. I'll go with Christian Wood.
Of course you
would. Christian Wood has experienced sort of a breakthrough season or breakthrough couple seasons. He's had brief stints in the early part of his career. Like he spent like a few games in Philly, Charlotte, Milwaukee, New Orleans. And then in Detroit, he got the starting spot after Andre Drummond got traded from there. And then from that point, he just took off. And then he came to Houston on a 2-year deal with not 2-year deal, a 4-year deal, where he was promised that he was going to be playing with elite level playmaking talent in James Harden. And that didn't happen because James Harden wanted out. So they traded for John Wall. And that didn't happen because they ended up benching him for 2 years. So now Christian Wood finally gets to play in a winning system. He gets to play in a good defensive scheme, which, if you know Christian Wood throughout his career, he's not really known as a good defensive presence. And even playing playing in a really bad team, he's still a nightly double-double. He still gets 10 rebounds every night. He still shoots like 40% from 3. He still is able to get 20 points a game. Dallas has desperately needed someone like that, and now he gets to play with someone of Luka Doncic's playmaking caliber. and it'll take a lot of pressure off. They'll take a lot of pressure off each other, and Christian Wood should be able to flourish in Houston, or not in Houston, sorry, in Dallas.
And because he went from Houston to Dallas, he still doesn't have to worry about state income tax. I think Christian Wood is a huge winner. I absolutely agree with you guys. This is the best situation of basketball he's played in his whole career so far. So good for him. What a win. Let's move on to the losers. And like I said, listener, this is the Dennis Schroeder Award, a player who either made less money than they assumed they would make in the open market, or they ended up in a situation that is probably not conducive for them. For me, the loser, and by the way, I have to say, guys, I had a little more trouble with this year than I have in the last couple years, because I feel like generally players were okay. They got paid decent money, or they ended up in good situations. But the one that sticks out to me most is definitely TJ Warren, who ended up signing a minimum contract with the Brooklyn Nets. So to me, he's a player that a year or two, or even bubble TJ Warren in 2020, was definitely better than a minimum contract. He is not ultra old, and he's still a good offensive player, except for the fact that we haven't seen him play basketball in a hot minute. And he ended up in a Brooklyn situation, listener, you already know, is that absolute shit show right now. So either he'll be a good stats, bad team guy, assuming they trade Kyrie and Kevin Durant, or he likely won't get that much PT anyway, and probably won't earn himself a crazy good contract next year. But you don't care about TJ Warren. You care about the next name on this list. Asad, who's a loser so far, at least?
So far, I would definitely say that DeAndre Ayton has kind of dug a hole for himself, based off of what happened last year or this past season in the finals, where, we're in their conference finals when Monty Williams comes out in game 7 and, being asked why did DeAndre Ayton not play that many minutes, he says it's internal, there, and he was, DeAndre Ayton did something, or there was some beef that happened with his effort level, his communication, that really kind of spurned the Suns and kind of them off from, re-signing him. And they've been actively shopping him, and teams haven't really bitten on DeAndre Ayton yet. He's a young enough player, number 1 pick, where the Suns are hoping that some team will bite. The Kevin Durant sweepstakes are in there. If they can flip DeAndre Ayton for Kevin Durant, of course, that would be a massive win. But Brooklyn wants literally anything and everything for Kevin Durant, which is understandable. But, DeAndre Ayton not even being no serious destinations, at this point is pretty surprising for a guy that prior to the playoffs was having, and even for the early part of the playoffs, was having a really good year.
I think DeAndre Ayton took a fat L when Detroit ended up trading for Jalen Durden, the 11 overall pick, because I think DeAndre Ayton was pretty heavily linked to Detroit, and now they have 3 centers on the roster with Isaiah Stewart, Duren, the guy they drafted, and then they ended up getting Nerlens Noel in the salary dump from New York. They already have 3 centers. They're not about to pay DeAndre Ayton a max contract or anything similar. So yes, I agree with you. Unfortunately, so far, he's a loser. That could change, but right now it doesn't look so great. Shaban, who's your loser real quick from the player side? And I think that you agree the sentiment. This is actually a little harder than I thought.
Yeah, like I had to pick a guy that like didn't even get traded or anything, or like didn't sign a massive deal yet, at least. I picked RJ Barrett as my loser because the Knicks just signed Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett play almost exactly the same. And except Jalen Brunson is is just a more efficient scorer and ball handler, as opposed to RJ Barrett. He scored 20 points a game last season, but he didn't do so very efficiently. And it's been sort of a slow climb for him to get acclimated in the NBA. Meanwhile, Jalen Brunson just came off of a run to the Western Conference Finals. He has a favorable standing with the coaching staff and the front office. So you have to kind of wonder, is the writing kind of on the wall for RJ Barrett? Because before we were talking about RJ Barrett possibly signing an extension, there has been no news about that extension since Jalen Brunson got signed. They extended Mitchell Robinson to a 4-year, $60 million deal. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a multi-year deal. RJ Barrett's kind of the odd man out here. And you would have to think, is he on the way out right now, or is he in the unfavorable situation in the eyes of the coach and the coach in the front office?
I kind of find it hard to believe that RJ Barrett is seen negatively in New York. My assumption is that he wants a max, and New York's like, we should give you a little less than a max. And so they're like, cool, we'll just wait another year anyway. Even if he signed a max, for example, this summer, he wouldn't get the max money right away. It'd be another year until he started that new contract anyway. So I guess they're just like, hey, let's see how much you improve, and then we'll come up with a number that makes more sense for the both of us once it's all said and done. If he turns into an all-star caliber player, he'll get the max. If he doesn't, he might not. Because from his draft class, the only people we've seen sign an extension so far are the two guys picked ahead of him in Zion, and I believe Ja has signed a contract extension.
Ja signed his max
right
this season. Yeah.
So like the first and second pick of that draft, I don't think anyone else from that draft has signed an extension anyway. So it's not as though it's the biggest slap to RJ's face. I think they're cool waiting it out another year before they give him whatever money he's due. So I kind of disagree with you, but I also understand where you're at, where Jalen Brunson probably doesn't make RJ better with the ball in his hands because he's not going to have the ball as much. I don't know. We'll see. New York just seems like they got a hodgepodge of decent players. Nothing too crazy. Let's move on to the winners, but like basketball teams. What teams got better? And then we'll talk about losers teams wise as well. For me, winner is very clear cut. It's the Milwaukee Bucks. They basically kept everything the same. And by the way, this is a team that we thought, if healthy, Chris Middleton, they probably would have won the NBA Finals, or at least gone to the NBA Finals. They probably would have beat Boston, considering they didn't have Chris Middleton, still took them to a pretty good series. And from there, they kept everybody, including Bobby Portis. And then they just signed Joe Ingles, who actually I like a lot for them coming off the bench. Papa Joe, solid ball handler, can kind of create off the bench. It's kind of exactly what you need, a veteran who knows how to play ball. They didn't get worse. They actually got marginally better. So I think Bucks are winners simply by getting a little bit better. And I think that's really all you need to do here in free agency. Shaban, what do you think, man? Is there a winner that sticks out to you?
A winner that sticks out to me, it's got to be Boston. Like Boston finally got Jason and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. They've done the best they can, taking turns creating and improving with their passing, but they really truly lacked a real playmaking, ball handling point guard. Not saying that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can't create off the dribble. They certainly can, but it's definitely not their primary priority to create for others. They needed someone to have that separate responsibility. Marcus Smart tried to be that guy in the playoffs, and he did well, but he's just not an elite level playmaking talent. If Malcolm Brogdon is not an elite level playmaking talent, he's sure up there. And also the fact that he's also able to create his own shot off the dribble. Malcolm Brogdon, not that long ago, was in the 50, 40, 90 club. He's a very good three-point shooter. He's a very good finisher in the lane. And he's a very good ball handler, very good passer. This is an absolute win for the Boston Celtics this offseason.
And they got him for free. So yes, you're absolutely right. The Boston Celtics unfortunately won. So who's your team winner?
There's a couple of teams I think that got big. The one I do want to shout out is like all the teams that got their superstars to sign their max contracts, because that's always a big deal, right? That, like the guys are up for extension. Are they going to sign it? Are they not going to sign it? But a lot of these guys,
some more than others.
Yeah, but like Jokic, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, Zach LaVine, Ja Morant, Darius Garland, all got their big max contracts. So definitely a win for all of those teams that they're keeping their core and their star pieces intact. The one team that I definitely want to touch on is the Clippers. So the Clippers, obviously,
is that what we're doing? We're just gonna torture Boston and the Clippers. Fuck you guys, Boston and the Clippers in the same segment. Are you fucking serious? Are you kidding
like
me?
that sometimes? Look, man, you focus on trying to trade Russell Westbrook for Kyrie. We'll talk about the Clippers for now. Okay.
I've resigned to the fact that it either does or doesn't happen based on if the Earth is flat or not, and that's all I know.
Fair enough. The Clippers basically brought back their entire team from last year. They're questionable off their free agents from last year. Nick Batum signed a 2-year deal. Amir Coffey signed a 3-year, $11 million deal. Zubac agreed to an extension. They still have Paul George. They still have Kawhi Leonard. They had a big trade during the trade deadline to get Norman Powell and Robert Covington. You're getting Kawhi back this year. And then you pick up a point guard in John Wall, who was stranded in Houston for a while. gets bought out and signs a 2-year, $13 million deal to come play for the Clippers. And then you still have, your entire roster from the last season that played really, really well, given that it was missing definitely one of its superstars, and if not two, since Paul George missed 3.5 months of the season, and they still finished as an 8 seed in the West. So
I don't know, dog. I think they lost because they lost Isaiah Hartenstein, one of the best backup bigs in the league. I think that's a big L for the Clippers, dog. What are you going to start, Zubac, and that's it?
But they don't. The whole point for the Clippers is to play 5 out and play small, and that's how they're going to fuck you up.
Please sense the sarcasm. Okay. Isaiah Hartenstein is not the reason, or is the reason for them to win an NBA championship. Something they've never done in the history of that team, might I add to you.
They got Luke Kennard. Who needs it?
They're going to trade Luke Kennard for a bag of bones at this point. They are so. I mean, look, but poor Steve Ballmer is going to have to start liquidating Microsoft stock for him to fucking pay the tax on this basketball team.
But he'll do it. Steve Ballmer.
Of course he will. He's a maniac. Of course he will. He's one of the best owners of basketball. I hate it.
Hey, the Clippers are moving to their own building. They're moving away from trying to get away from the shadow of the Lakers, which I don't know if it's actually possible, but
it's not. It's not possible in the city of LA. They should move to Seattle. That would be smart for them. Seattle
Honestly,
would love to have them as a basketball team.
Hey, I just read a story about how LeBron's trying to own a team in Las Vegas. So hey,
that's coming. That's definitely when LeBron retires.
100%
like 2 years after that.
That's happening.
Yeah, there will be an expansion franchise in Vegas for sure.
It wouldn't shock me if they expanded the franchise in Vegas and LeBron played his last year on that team somehow, just to bring it in. Anyway, let's go into team losers. Obviously, teams that lost, based on the signings that they made. Shaban, do you want to start this segment? I'm afraid of what you'll say, so sure, I guess.
Okay, I will say this team, but I will give the caveat that this is still up in the air.
So then don't say it. So then don't say it.
Say it. Do it.
Say the other one.
Do it, Shaban.
Talk about the other one.
It's got to be the Lakers, right? Like,
no, it's not. We're doing fine. Thank you. I love Thomas Bryant as our starting center. That makes me so fucking happy. I'm ecstatic.
Partial ACL tear recovery. But yeah, like, it's got to be the Lakers, man. I mean, I guess the reason I say it's up in the air because it really depends on what happens with Brooklyn and what they're going to do with that team and the eventual fallout that's going to happen, because the Lakers are very aggressive in trying to get Kyrie Irving. So if they do end up getting Kyrie Irving and get rid of Russell Westbrook, then hey, that just throws everything out the window, right? They're automatic winners, there.
When was the last time?
I would put it.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask you a question real quick. When was the last time that you can remember that a player was on the trade block that basically nobody wanted, but if one team, and in this case the Lakers, acquired him, it turns them into championship contenders all of a sudden? Like, when was the last time there was a player like that? Kyrie is that polarizing that he's so good that apparently he turns the Lakers into championship contenders, right? But nobody wants him. Is that not fucking weird? What'd you say?
Yeah.
When he plays.
If he plays. Yeah, well, my assumption, and again, it is such an assumption with Kyrie Irving, which is like why I want him and also don't, because it's like that's a headache. And right now it's funny because he's not my headache, but he very well could become my headache rather soon. My assumption would be that him and LeBron have talked. And that could be said about his best fucking friend, Kevin Durant, last year when he decided still not to play. I don't know. Why am I speculating? I don't know. Look, the Lakers so far, not the best free agency. I agree with you. I hate that you said it. And you just talked about the Celtics and the Clippers 3 seconds ago. So apparently it's fuck with safe day. Whatever. Anyway, Asad, who's a loser?
We'll talk
about me, apparently.
We'll talk about the Spurs here. I think that DeJounte Murray, them giving away DeJounte Murray makes sense in terms of their timeline. They weren't going to win a championship with this team. I just felt like they could have gotten either more, or it just doesn't, like, in terms of like not just the picks, but like a player or like assets in return, like other than like just picks, because realistically, like the Hawks picks are going to come later, or that's the gamble and that's what we're banking on. But they are fully accepting the tank mode, I guess, and they're playing that gamble of the lottery and trying to get into the top to get that new star piece. So I think in a similar boat with kind of where the Lakers are, like in terms of like it's a TBD where we'll see how this Kyrie situation plays out. If the Spurs end up getting Victor, or like that high level star piece in the lottery, they will be a loser. But given where they are now, I think they're a loser.
I said, say his last name. Say Victor's last name.
Wembanyama.
And that's why you keep saying Victor. I was like, I had a feeling you were copping out for a reason. His last name is a bit difficult. But don't worry, we learned at Antetokounmpo. We'll learn Wembanyama if he's really that good.
He could become a household name. Who knows?
I will extend what Asad said, and I will say that this is specifically an L for Greg Popovich because
I agree with that. Yeah, that's fair.
Writing's kind of on the wall for him, and like he's probably going to retire either this season or next season, but it doesn't matter because the Spurs will not be contenders and this year, next year, or probably the year after that. So it's a really sad and tragic ending to Greg Popovich's coaching career as the winningest coach of all time, I believe.
Hey, man, you never know. Maybe he finally goes and coaches another I'm kidding. That's never going to happen. A loser for me, I think it's very, very clear. It is the Washington Wizards. They signed Bradley Beal to a 5-year, $251 million contract. And prior to hitting record on this episode, we found out that also included an absolute no trade clause. So when it comes time for Bradley Beal to ask out, which we all know that time will come, whether it be next summer or the summer after or whenever, he'll have a say where he goes and can absolutely say no at any given time.
I can't believe Washington agreed to that.
I think the assumption simply was, hey, we'll pay you all this money so that you can definitely ask out in a year, and then we'll still send you to exactly where you'd like to go, even if there's probably no good trade package available at that point. This is a huge L for Washington simply because Bradley Beal is being paid like a number one, and he does not play basketball anything close to a number one. He is maybe a top 20 player in the NBA, and he's basically getting paid like a top 12 or 15 guy in the NBA, or at least a young prospect like a Ja or Zion who could potentially become a top 15 player, or 12 player, or 10 player in the NBA if they aren't already. Bradley Beal is neither of those things, and yet is getting paid like it. This makes no sense, and Washington simply should have been like, hey, we're actually just not going to re-sign you, and you can go get money from somewhere else. And then he would end up in like Orlando or something. So the Wizards are losers. But surprise, Wizards fans, that's not a change from history. Enjoy that. We're going to move on to the best value contracts that have been signed so far. I think the way that I went about this category is simply this player got this money in this situation, and it's really good for everyone involved, including the player, including the situation. So, Asad, start us off, man. Who's your best value contract?
So my best guy, well, I had a couple, and we talked about them briefly. So one being Joe Ingles signing a 1-year flyer deal with Milwaukee.
Love that.
$6.4 million 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming off an ACL tear. He's 35, but if he can be anything close to what he was with Utah, be a huge win with his playmaking abilities, because the Bucks could definitely use that coming off the bench. And then even John Wall, right? 2-year, 30. John Wall's a nice player to have when you're not paying him $47 million.
I mean, look, we don't know what John Wall is, but the way that they paid him, he could be backup point guard, and it's still worth the number they gave him.
Yeah, it was 2 year, $13 million.
It's a very buy low kind of contract. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't played basketball in like a year, and older injury issues. Didn't have that same burst that he had in Washington.
He hasn't played basketball since like 2013 or something like that.
Feels that way.
I mean, it's been a minute.
I mean, credit to him. He's been like, even though he's been benched for God knows how long. Actually, you just said.
You said credit to him, like he wasn't getting paid $40+ million to just go home.
But
and
I mean, but
Miami.
I'm saying credit to him. Like he's actually been, staying in shape and still doing this daily workouts, still doing his daily drills. Like he's still like in game shape and game ready. even
think-
while like he was being sidelined for so long.
He's
I think
he's a
Shaban,
professional
you are-
athlete. He's a professional athlete making millions of dollars.
That's kind of
Like,
my point.
That's the least that
That's
you
the
could do,
bare
bro. Like,
minimum, Shaban.
if
Like,
you need me to stay in shape and you will give me even $1 million, fuck that. Even like $40,000, I'll do it right now.
Well, that's because we're fucking broke ass like motherfuckers over here.
no,
man.
look. You're very, very nice, Shaban, and I appreciate that about you. It's one of my favorite things about you. However, if I'm paying you $40 million, the least you can do is stay in shape. That's the bare minimum you could do. That's asking a lot from certain basketball players. I know, but come on, get your shit together. So you talked about John Wall and Joe Ingles. Shaban, who are your best value contracts?
I mean, you're gonna hate me for bringing up the Mavs again, but
Bro,
it's their-
enough. We get it. You had a good fucking summer. Your subreddit acts like it's absolute the worst summer in human history and that you should fire and
man.
murder. It's actually so weird the sentiment that you have about the Mavericks versus the majority. I take that back. The seemingly majority of your fan base that is different from your view of the summer. You had a good summer, and they're like, we hate everything.
I read the subreddit and I have to remember that I've been a Mavericks fan for longer than most of these kids have probably ever been born. So I've seen Dallas have some real shit off seasons. I was there. Like, we just won a championship in 2011, and what do? We blow up the team. That's our response. That's how we re-up. That comes nowhere near that's a whole class of its own. But this year we ended up getting JaVale McGee, who he signed a contract for 3 years, $20 million. However, they actually withheld some of his money for the mid-level exception. So his contract, when it hits the cap, is actually more 3 years, $17 million. So at that point, you're getting JaVale McGee for a little over $6 million a year, who was the best defensive big man and the best team in the league last season, of course in air quotes because they lost. But and also the fact that to put in perspective,
Don't talk about JaVale for the next 7 minutes. Okay, come on,
All right, to put in perspective, the second most efficient pick and roll man in the NBA at 1.42 points per possession was Dwight Powell. And that should tell you something, because Dwight Powell last year was fucking awful. Like, he was buns. He didn't even get any minutes in the Western Conference Finals. He was that bad. Like, he's probably good for 2 lobs in the first 7 minutes of each game. And then
got it. Dwight Powell sucks. The Mavs had a good summer. Shaban, we've talked about the Mavs 19 times today. I don't want to sit here and talk about the Mavs. It's not Locked On Mavs.
The bar is quite low for Mavs big men.
Right.
So.
Right. I will go and be very quick.
So yeah,
one of the best backup point guards in the league. His name is Tyus Jones. He signed a 2-year, $30 million contract in a situation in which I think most people would have assumed that he was not going to stay in Memphis because he was going to cost more and it was going to be harder to keep around. Memphis kept him. He's solid. I like him a lot. And that's kind of it. I'm cool with the best the best values. And that's kind of funny enough what we talked about. We talked about a bunch of bench players just now for the most part. Maybe JaVale might start. But that's kind of it. Basically, everybody else will likely be a bench player unless John Wall turns into John Wall. That'd be cool. Worst value contracts. I'll be quick because I just talked about him. I think Bradley Beal is one of the worst value contracts. I think 5 years, $251 million for a player who's just simply not going to be the best player on a championship team is too much. I will move on very quickly. Shaban, who is one of the worst value contracts? I have a feeling I know where you're going here.
I mean, I'll be brief because we kind of talked about it earlier, just a few minutes ago. But yeah, Jalen Brunson. You're paying you're paying him $105 million over 4 years. You're paying him like a little over $25 million a year. Jalen Brunson's not a $25 million a year player. That's just facts.
You sound like the spiteful ex, my friend.
I mean, hey, we offered him 105, which is like I would say that's his market value, like between 18 to $25 million a year. Like, well, with the
you offered him
105
and he signed 104.
No, we offered him 105, and he took 104.
He took 104. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the most he would have made with Dallas is 25. The least he would have made with New York is 25 mil.
Gotcha. All right, I said quickly, worst value contracts.
It's a guy I love, but unfortunately, I don't love him being
bad
37 years old. It's just PJ Tucker. So PJ Tucker joining his best friends, Daryl Morey and James Harden in Philadelphia on a 3-year, $33 million deal. Look, I love PJ. He's a great player. But at this stage of his career, being 37 years old, barely able to shoot, and like good for 20 minutes in the playoffs, and that's about it, and nothing in the regular season. Paying him $11 million a year is a lot. So
Dude, he's gonna be 40.
Don't love that.
He's gonna be 40 when this contract is done. 40.
Yeah, I don't love it. Good for PJ. Love the guy. Would not do it if I was Daryl Morey, but
Hey, man,
he loves him.
That's gonna be a lot of sneakers. So good for you, PJ. Let's move on to best fits. So this doesn't have to do with anything with the money. This has to do with we just like how this player is gonna fit into this team. Going first, I've got slow-mo Kyle Anderson. He left the Memphis Grizzlies and jumped into the Timberwolves. Now, this was good when the signing happened, and it actually, I would say, if you're going to talk about Rudy Gobert, this actually got better after Rudy got there. Kyle Anderson is a good basketball defender. He's a very good ball mover. He doesn't stop. And by the way, he doesn't need or take a lot of shots. On a team in which you have D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, you kind of want a player who just plays good defense, doesn't stop the ball, and doesn't take a lot of shots. And Kyle Anderson is that guy. And they got him for a reasonable contract. I believe it was 3 years, 18 million question mark.
Two years, 18, I think.
2 years, 18 million. Either way, solid number for a solid basketball player. I think he'll fit in perfectly. They need a guy to play defense and not take a bunch of shots, and they got that. And they got Gobert, and it made that much more sense in my opinion. Shaban, best fit. Who'd you like? I just looked at.
I'm not gonna.
Is that what we're doing all day?
I'm not gonna say it. Right?
Is that what we're doing? We're just gonna talk about your team the whole fucking episode.
No, I was.
Listener, he wrote Christian Wood with Luka. That's what he wrote in the doc.
All right, well, okay, I did write that, but I'm actually gonna say just Dejounte Murray with Dejounte Murray with Trae Young.
Thank you.
Dejounte Murray is just Dejounte Murray is an ideal star running mate with Trae Young. He is a playmaking, shot creating ball handler who plays really good defense. He is exactly what Trae Young needs, and Trae Young is exactly what he needs. You know, they can create for each other. Trae can live more so on the 3-point line, that's his specialty. Dejounte Murray can create off the dribble and those mid-range pull-ups that he's so adept at. I say it's a perfect fit.
Does this sound like he's trying not to say his first name because he's not sure? Am I crazy? It's Dejounte Murray.
Yeah, that's why I said. That's why I said Dejounte.
It was like Dejounte. Like it was like a little maybe that's his name.
Yo, listener, you tell me if he and I just said the same thing, okay? Because I don't think we said the same thing just now. I think he thinks we said the same thing. Anyway, move on. Also, I also see that you have a name that we've talked about. So can you be very, very quick? Because we've already talked about this.
I'm gonna pivot off. I'm gonna talk about a different guy. The Warriors, after losing Gary Payton and Otto Porter in the offseason, they signed Dante DiVincenzo to a 2-year, $9.3 million deal. Obviously, losing two defenders and guys that the wing players that they really liked and gave them good wing depth for the Warriors and Gary Payton and Otto Porter Jr. They get one of those replaced on a fairly good deal in Dante DiVincenzo. Same prototype, 3-and-D player. He'll fit into their system very easily. He'll shoot some threes. He'll play some defense on the wing. That's all they wanted. They paid him $4.5 million a year. It's a good deal for both sides.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you pivoted off. I'd rather talk about that. Very good deal. Very good signing. I unfortunately wanted the Lakers to get him. That did not work out. Whatever.
Oh, hey, you got one Toscano Anderson. You got another Warrior on your team.
I'm so happy. Thanks, bro. Worst fits. We're gonna move on to worst fits. Shaba, I don't want to hear you made this a Mavericks episode. I hate you for that. The worst fits. I'll be quick. I picked Goran Dragic with the Bulls for about two major reasons. One, why is he not playing with Luka? What the hell is going on? He's been rumored to go to Dallas for, I don't know, basically since Luka was a rookie. And now Luka's in his fifth year in the NBA and they're still not playing together. And now maybe they never will. Who the fuck knows? And on top of that, they have 17 guards that do the same thing or do better versions of what Dragic is going to do. They've got, correct me if I'm wrong, they've got Lonzo, Alex Caruso, they've got Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, And also another ball handler who's a guard but not a guard is DeMar DeRozan. They have 6 people who play guard on this basketball team, and then they went and signed another one. I don't fucking get it. And it's not like they gave him a ton of money. I think it was like 1 year, 2.1 or 2.3 million bucks.
2.9.
2.9. Thank you, Shaban. 2.9 million bucks. So he signed for a little higher than veteran minimum. I basically took a bit of the taxpayer mid-level exception, I believe is how that worked out. He didn't make a huge payday to be like, yeah, let me go on a team where I'm never gonna play basketball. Or if I do, it's at the cost of someone who probably should be playing more than me. I don't know. Stupid deal. I wish he would have gone somewhere else that would have helped another team. This doesn't make any sense. I hate it. I know Shaban's a little upset about it because it would have been fun to see the two brothers together, but whatever. Shaban, who you got?
I got Kevin Herter to Sacramento.
Poor K.
Because Sacramento has much deeper problems than just adding one shooter. Like, granted, Kevin Herter is a really good 3-point shooter at 38%, but he also happens to be the third worst defensive player in the entire NBA. And Sacramento is a
defensive juggernaut.
And Sacramento also happens to be the worst defenses. Yeah, and Sacramento is terrible on defense, and they're really bad on offense, like as a whole. And one person is not gonna change that. Like, besides, he'll probably be the only guy besides Harrison Barnes that will actually hit threes at a decent clip.
I think the only logic that I can come to is, one, they got him for very little. The Hawks didn't really ask for a whole lot in that trade, at least from my understanding. And then they needed another guy. Like, Kevin Herter did a pretty decent job being a second or third ball handler on the team, and they kind of got one, right? They have Fox. Now they have Herter. They also have... Is there another ball handler on that team that I can't think of one? Can you think of one?
Davion Mitchell?
Is he really a ball handler?
I don't know.
He's like a defensive primary guard. I don't know if he's a ball handler per se. And maybe we all sound crazy right now. Listener, you might be beating your face off. Asad, real quick, worst fit. I think this one's hilarious because I thought about it too. It's very funny.
It's Mo Bamba. Like,
Thank you.
They kept him for the song.
They just wanted to keep playing the song in the stadium. They had no interest in the player.
Yeah, but they could have done. Why pay him $21 million over 2 years?
Why did he sign it?
Just plug in fucking Spotify and just play the song, bro. Like, it's not that much. Like, why you gotta have him in the building for it? It doesn't make any sense. Orlando has.
He just wants to be close to Disney, man. It's the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, there are so many other places I feel like he could have gone to where he would have gotten like legitimate playing time. But now he's competing with Wendell Carter Jr., who had a really good year in his own right. Jonathan Isaac, Big Man Chuma Okeke, Mo Wagner, and now their number 1 overall pick, Paolo Banchero, who's going to be playing the 4, maybe even a stretch 5 if they get crazy with it. There's a lot of minutes to be shifted there, and Mo Bamba had a really good last year. Was able to shooting well from the field, from 3, averaging a career high in blocks, I think, as well. So he had a good year, and so I'm just honestly surprised that he took that deal and no team. There are teams that would probably be throwing him like $13-15 million, and he could have gotten more opportunity.
Apparently
I think
not.
so.
Apparently not, because this deal was signed within an hour of free agency opening.
It's quick.
Right? I think it was rather quick. So clearly his agent either did a shit job or they surveyed the league and this was the best offer available. The only thing I hate about this deal is something you said, Asad. He played 25 minutes per game last year, which honestly is a little higher than I remember it. I feel like he never got any playing time. He's not like, he went back to a scenario in which he didn't get that much playing time to begin with. I wish he would have gone to a better scenario where he got more playing time. I'm not really sure exactly where that would have been, but it would have been fun to see him on a different basketball team. Charlotte, for example.
How about Brooklyn?
Brooklyn could have used him.
Portland played Nurkic 4 years, $70 million for slow ass broken Yusuf Nurkic. Like, you could have given that money to Bamba.
Why can't he play next to Sabonis in Sacramento? What am I missing? You know what I'm saying? Like,
he can stretch the floor. He can shoot threes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a handful of scenarios where I feel like he would have been a better fit and gotten majority more minutes than he would now, but whatever. It is what it is. We're kind of done with our segments here. Is there any player that we didn't discuss or a deal we didn't discuss that you just wanted to highlight real quick before we call it? We're getting close to that hour mark anyway. So I kind of want to get out of here. But Is there anybody? I mean, look, the one thing that shocked me was the Marvin Bagley 3 years, $37 million. Who exactly were just Detroit competing against to keep Marvin Bagley for 3 years and $37 million? I'm not sure. That's the question I ask myself a lot is when I see something, I go, who exactly were you competing against to sign this contract? Who's throwing 3 and 37 and Marvin Bagley?
All we need to know is that they took Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic and Trae Young, and that should be the end of this conversation.
Well, no, we're talking about Detroit, right? Detroit is what signed. Yeah. They did not take Bagley over.
Well, I don't know what they saw like that. In Marvin Bagley.
Bagley's fine. I don't mind you re-signing Bagley and taking a flyer on a young guy who still could potentially pan out. 3 years and 37 is a little more than a flyer, I would say. What else stuck out? Really, the both Martin brothers, good for them. They got a little bit of cash, a little more than I would argue. Drummond going to the Bulls as a backup was a little interesting. 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but it wasn't that much. It was like
12 or 13, something like that.
Total. Yeah. I think it was like, it might've been even less than that. I don't remember. Either way, going as a backup to the
5
Bulls.
years.
Lou Dort was a good one. That's what I was going to say.
I'm glad you brought that up, Shaban. He signed 5 years and like 87 mil.
87.5.
87.5.
Yeah. How do we feel about that? I'm a little not sure how. Honestly, I'm kind of on the fence. It's like I like Lou Dort. Do I like him for this money? But also, like, in 3 years of this contract, the NBA salary is going to go up, the cap will go up, and then this contract won't look as bad because it really won't, right? Like $17 million today that he gets paid is probably worth $13 million 3 years from now, based on the salary cap projections.
They must really like his development, and considering how he really drastically improved his 3-point shooting from a couple years ago to now. And obviously defensively, he's been really, really good.
I like Lou, but like, what does he do on a good basketball team is the question. Like, it's really easy to be good on a bad basketball team with opportunity.
I mean, you talk about like a guy like OG Anunoby, right? Who's known as like a 3-and-D premier defender and can all do the same things. I think Lou Dort is in the upper echelon of 3-and-D players in our league, and him being so young, the Thunder paid him that way and are banking on that.
That's fair. The other one that stuck out was what's his face? Bruce Brown to the Nuggets. Love that.
Good.
I like
good
that
move.
a lot.
Good move.
That's a
Nuggets good offseason. Honestly, good offseason.
Decent offseason, but I like that. I like that pickup a lot. Bruce Brown was like a small ball 5 in some ways, and now he has Jokic playing the actual 5, but on offense can kind of still slash and cut, and that'll be fun. Shaban, anything else stick out to you, man?
Let's see. Ricky Rubio went back to Cleveland for 3 years.
He got good money too. Like, he got relatively good money. More than I expected him to get, that's for sure. Also, how do you feel about the Jayshawn Tate extension? 3 years they gave him?
Yeah, they gave him a 3-year extension. The number, it wasn't too bad. They really like Jayshawn Tate. And I mean, I like him as well.
I like Jayshawn Tate. I think he's a good quality NBA player.
3-year, $22 million. So
it seems relatively low risk.
Good value. It's the same concept that the modern NBA, just there's so many like wings and 3-and-D players that are always in demand. So him being that young and being able to do that, and Jay Sean showed flashes, and it's a young Rockets team. There's a lot of opportunity, and the contract isn't like that bad where it's going to hurt, even if he does suck. So I think it's a fair deal, and if not, it's just there's more upside.
Mm-hmm. And Shaban, real quick, Mitchell Robinson, 4 years, I believe 60. How do you feel, real quick? And then let's get out of here.
I like the deal. I like Mitchell Robinson a lot. I find him to be one of the most underrated centers in the league. He's a bona fide shot blocker in every aspect. He's just great interior presence all around. I love Mitchell Robinson.
All right. I just laughed because every time I hear the word bona fide, I think of that clip of Stephen A. Smith calling Kwame Brown a bona fide
scrub.
Scrub.
Exactly.
No
anyway,
disrespect to the dude.
Listener, thank you for listening to another episode of the Hoopologist podcast. We'll probably see you next week, and then we'll do some more free agency roundup. By then, maybe Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are on different teams, or maybe who knows who. I don't even know. The NBA is ever changing, and that's why this is fun. In the meantime, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Take care. See ya.
Later.
Peace.